Now, a majority of countries are making little or no progress in ending corruption, while journalists and activists in corrupt countries are risking their lives every day in an effort to speak out. This is according to anti-corruption watchdog Transparency International. Publishing its 2017 Corruption Perceptions Index, Transparency International says there's been a surge in the corruption burden in more than two-thirds of countries, with crackdowns on NGOs and media exacerbating levels of corruption. According to the report, several countries significantly improved their Corruption Perception Index (CPI) score for over the last 6 years, including Côte d'Ivoire, Senegal, and the United Kingdom.
In Africa, however, according to the annual report published by Transparency International, Botswana is ranked 34th globally with a score of 61, then followed by Seychelles, Cape Verde, Rwanda and Namibia. And then at the bottom of the ranking, the two Sudans and Somalia are the most corrupt countries in the world, accompanied by Syria, Afghanistan and Yemen. Somalia was ranked last place in the world ranking.
Kinda Atta is Transparency International's Middle East and North Africa expert. She joins us now from Berlin, Germany. Kinda, good morning and welcome to the program. Corruption is recorded on different levels, and it is, of course, very much connected to impunity. What exactly, Kinda, would you say is the case in some of the countries mentioned in the new in the new report? I mean, for Somalia, South Sudan, Libya, and the rest in sub-Saharan Africa.
If we start with Somalia being the last on the Corruption Perception Index, it has been so for so long, but the slow process of rebuilding the systems in government and the parliament and elections, this is why it's still where it is in the index. So as quick as the systems are in place, as quick as we will have better anti-corruption mechanisms in place. So this is for one. For Libya, for example, you have the conflict and all the control over natural resources and the back and forth of building which government that would actually represent all Libya and all that internal instability. This is one other thing that will affect the fight against corruption and doesn't put it on the agenda. There are no systems working in place as parliaments or even independent institutions that would monitor and hold officials accountable. There are lots of financial issues and transactions that are not monitored, grand corruption cases that might occur, but there is no one to actually hold them accountable. And there are laws that are not in place to prevent impunity. In Sudan and South Sudan, you also have there are the peace negotiations going in South Sudan, and then you have the anti-corruption agenda being put aside. And this is also, unfortunately, not on the priority list of these negotiations, because it could be a main factor of what is going on in the country. So in general, there are different aspects of the fight against corruption in those countries, but we also know that poverty and poor mechanism and also poor participation of civil society and people is also a reason behind that.
Kinda, it is important to note that some of these countries that you mentioned are conflicted countries or regions where governments appear more focused on ending the war there, or the civil conflicts there. Isn't that enough to make fighting corruption a complex thing in the countries?
In conflict-hit countries or unstable countries, the challenge of fighting corruption begins with lack of proper systems and governments in place. So the priority comes first to build the system, to rebuild governments and institutions. Therefore, anti-corruption agendas are put behind. Therefore, any room for corruption is still there. That's why it helps that corruption is not. It helps that corruption thrives in those in the lack of system and accountability and monitoring perspective.
And what then would be the government's role, or a government's role, and the circumstances that must change for these corruption perceptions to change, and in fact to change sooner?
I think the continent has a positive perspective. There are countries who have taken time to actually put the agenda of the fight against corruption. You have good examples of how, if there is a political will, there could be good mechanisms to fight the corruption. It's not easy. It's not an overnight thing to fight corruption and eliminate it. But if there is a political will and if there is people's will, there will be this change. You have several examples in the continent, like Côte d'Ivoire and Senegal, and they have increased in the index over several years, but they have also set some laws and regulations that would prevent corruption and also not allow for further forms of corruption to form. So this year is also the anti-corruption year of the African Union. So that's another it's another chance that the AU would force leaders to take this political will down to implementation on the ground to fight corruption.
Indeed, what many Kinda will be willing to see in order to improve the corruption index on the continent. I'd like to thank you for speaking with us, Kinda. That is Kinda, I'm trying to get your surname now, Kinda Harta, Transparency International's Middle East and North Africa experts. Thank you very much.